When I was lost, I found you as a refuge. So let me in, cause I just wanna be close to you. Today is the day, so live it up, up, up and away. Fly high over all that you have made, and I will praise your name. Piruli Shari Tzedek, Avovam Odea. Open for me, honestly, pull the gates wide, let them swing right open, and I will run through Piruli. This me is brand new, and I can do whatever I want to. I say whatever I set my mind to. When nobody expected, but the stone that the builders rejected has become the most important piece. So you will hear from me. Piruli Shari Tzedek, Avovam Odea. Open for me, honestly, pull the gates wide, let them swing right open, and I will run through Piruli. Piruli Shari Tzedek, Avovam Odea. Open for me, honestly, pull the gates wide, let them swing right open, and I will run through Piruli.
Good evening, Shabbat Shalom, and welcome, whether you are joining us in person at Temple Emanuel at South Hills or whether you are with us in sacred virtual community. I'm so glad we can be together for Shabbat evening services tonight. As I was saying to those who are in the room, that melody with which we began was written by Jacob Spike Krause, a musician. He was the musician in residence at Temple Israel in West Bloomfield. He recently moved to New York. We're fortunate to have him a couple of times throughout the year as our musician in residence, in addition to welcoming back Sierra Fox for her second year. August 12th, I believe, is the first time when Sierra is back from Israel and will be with us again. So mark your calendars now. Emily breathes a sigh of relief that she is coming back. But it is wonderful to be together. Hine ma tov. You can find these words on page 10 in your prayer book.
Hine ma tov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad.
Though perhaps we don't need their actual warmth, we certainly need their symbolic warmth and the light that the Shabbat candles bring. And as we turn to page 2 in our prayer book, followed by page 5, it's my pleasure to invite forward Kim and Dave to lead us first in the kindling of our Shabbat lights and then in our blessing over the sweetness of Shabbat.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
And only if it is comfortable for you to do so do I invite you to rise as we turn to pages 4 and 5, symbolically joining in the act of Kiddush together.
V'hi Erev, v'hi Boker, Yom Hashishi, and there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho me'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit ki hu yom tefila lemikra'e kodesh zecher etziat Mitzrayim kivanu v'charta ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim ve'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh hashabbat. Chaim. Shabbat shalom.
You are welcome to be seated. Our Shabbat evening service begins in song and in psalm. In case Jacob Spike Krause's melody wasn't enough to get you in the mood, in case Hine Matov and Kiddush, we turn to words of Psalm 95 on page 12 in our prayer book as we sing joyously as we welcome Shabbat.
Lechu neranena, yai lai 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 lai, l'Adonai, yai lai 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 lai, nariya, yai lai 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 lai, letzor yishenu, yai lai 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 lai. Let us sing out to God, maker of all sure and strong. Let all of creation from mountain to sea hear our song. Lechu neranena, yai lai 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 lai, l'Adonai, yai lai 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 lai, nariya, yai lai 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 lai, of the wonder in all of God's light, we rejoice. So now let us listen with all of our hearts to hear God's voice. Lechu ne'anena, yai lai 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 lai, l'Adonai, yai lai 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 lai, na'ariyah, yai lai 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 lai, letzor yisheinu, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai 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 lai.
And on pages 20 and 21 in our prayer book, we find words of Lecha Dodi welcoming even Shabbat to be with us in this space, with us in this moment in time, with us in our celebration of our day of rest.
Lecha Dodi likat kala, p'nei Shabbat nekabela. 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 Shamor v'zachor b'dibor echad, hishmi'anu el ha'miyachad. Adonai echad u'shmo echad, l'shem u'tiferet v'lidhila. Lecha Dodi likat kala, p'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likat kala, p'nei Shabbat nekabela. Likat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, ki mekor habracha, merosh mikedem nesucha. Sof maaseh b'mashvat tchila. Lecha Dodi likat kala, p'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likat kala, p'nei Shabbat nekabela. Hitoreri, toreri, ki va'orech kumi ori, uri, uri, shir daberi, kivod Adonai alayich nigla. Lecha Dodi likat kala, p'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likat kala, p'nei Shabbat nekabela. Boi v'shalom ateret bala, gam b'simcha u'b'tzola. Toch emunei am segula. Boi chala, boi chala. Lecha Dodi likat kala, p'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likat kala, p'nei Shabbat nekabela.
If you are joining us at home or perhaps you are on the road, I invite you to use the comment box on Facebook or YouTube to wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom. And if you're with us in the room, now is a wonderful opportunity to turn to the people beside you. I don't know where we're at with COVID, elbow bumps, fist bumps, waves. Wish them a Shabbat Shalom, that we might know with whom we pray this evening. And I invite you to be seated when you are ready as we continue greeting Shabbat with the words of Psalms. We continue with Psalm 92 on page 22. on the bottom of the page.
It's in the little indented part. Tzadikata yifrach ke'erez balvanon yizgeh sheturim bevet Adonai mechatzrot Eloheinu yafrichu ad yenuvun v'seva neshenim v'rananim iyu lehagid ki ashar Adonai suri v'lo avlata bo.
And in the middle of page 27, would you join me in the English? Teach me, O God, a blessing, a prayer, on the mystery of a withered leaf, on ripened fruit so fair, on the freedom to see, to sense, to breathe, to know, to hope, to despair. Teach my lips a blessing, a hymn of praise. As each morning and night you renew your days, lest my day be today as the one before, lest routine set my ways. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uv'yomechon, uv'chayedecho Beit Yisrael, bagala, uvizman kariv, Veimeru.
Amen.
Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach, le'alam u'la me'amaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitbar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitalev v'yithalal shemei d'kudsha. B'richu le'la mincho birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran v'alma v'meru. The formal call to worship, our Baruch Hu praise, page 28. And again, if it is comfortable for you to do so, I invite you to rise as we join together in prayer.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach Baruch Adonai HaMevorach HaMevorach Le'olam va'ed HaMevorach HaMevorach Le'olam va'ed.
On the top of page 31, would you join me? Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. creator of the tide of time and light. You guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai, hama'ariv aravim. And on the bottom of page 33, wisdom and wonder, passion and instruction, story and symbol. All these things your Torah gives to us, and the more we devote ourselves to it, the more it grows and gives. What could be a truer token of your abiding love than this holiest of your works and the living language that gives it form? Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed.
You're welcome to be seated.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם, ושירתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
As we turn to page 40 in our prayer books, celebrating our freedom as did our ancient ancestors on the shores of the sea, we realize that freedom, as it is expressed in this prayer and this praise, takes on an expansive quality. It's not only the freedom from slavery, but perhaps the freedom to be in control of one's schedule, perhaps the freedom to make one's own choices. Sometimes those choices work out for the better. Sometimes those choices don't, and we have to make another set of choices, hopefully bringing us closer to the truth, bringing us close to the peace, bringing us closer to the people we want to be, for the opportunity for trial and error, for the opportunity to be the ones making those choices. We offer thanks and praise to God as our ancestors did. Page 40.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נראה בקודש, נורא תהילות אוספת, נורא תהילות אוספת. מלכותך ראו בניך, בוקר יום לפני משה ומרים, זה הביאנו ואמרו זה ve'elianu ve'amiru Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed Yai lai lai la lai la 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 lai Yai lai la 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 lai Yai lai lai la lai la 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 lai Yai lai 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 ya la la lai lai.
For our Hashkivenu praise on page 42, would you join me in the English on the bottom of the page before we sing in the Hebrew together? Grant, O God, that we may lie down in peace and raise us up, our guardian, to life renewed. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with your good counsel. For your name's sake, be our help. Shield and shelter us beneath the shadow of your wings. Distance us from enemies, illness, war, famine, and sorrow. Distance us from wrongdoing. For you, God, watch over us and deliver us. For you, God, are gracious and merciful. Guard our going and coming to life and to peace evermore. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem.
Baruch atah Adonai haporei sukat shalom Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim ve'al kol amo ve'al Yerushalayim shalom Baruch atah Adonai haporei sukat shalom Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim ve'al kol amo ve'al Yerushalayim shalom Baruch atah Adonai haporei sukat shalom Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael.
And on pages 44 and 45, giving thanks for the covenant of Shabbat. We are a people in whom the past endures, in whom the present is inconceivable without moments gone by. The Exodus lasted a moment enduring forever. What happened once upon a time happens all the time.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם בבית עולם ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת You're fine. לעשות את השבת לדורותם בבית עולם ביני ובין בני ישראל עוד היא לעולם עוד היא לעולם עוד היא לעולם ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם בבית עולם כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם בבית עולם וביום השביעי שבת ונפש Shabbat v'nafash, Shabbat v'nafash, v'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
We continue now on page 46 with the start of our Shabbat evening Amidah. Again, if it is comfortable for you to do so, I invite you to rise as we join in song and in prayer together.
Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagi tehillatcha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanorah, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei Hakol, V'Zocher Chasdei Avot V'Imahot, U'Mevi Geula Livnei V'neihem, L'ma'an Shemo Ve'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'ezrat Sarah. Atah gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayeh hakol atah Rav le'hoshia, Morid hatahal. Mechalkel chayim bechesed, Mechayeh hakol berachamim rabim, Somech noflim verofeh cholim, Umatir asurim, Umekayem emunato lishenei afar, Micha mocha ba'agivurot, Umido melech, Melech memit umechayeh, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman atah lachayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayeh hakol. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, U'kadoshim b'chol yom yahalelucha salah. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh.
I invite you to be seated as we turn to page 60 in our prayer book, adding to this section of our service our prayers for peace.
Shalom Rahava Yisrael Amcha Tasihim Leolam. Shalom Rahava Yisrael Amcha Tasihim Leolam. Ki atah Melech Adon Lechol HaShalom. Ki atah Melech Adon Lechol HaShalom. Shalom Rahava Yisrael Amcha Tasihim Leolam. Shalom Rahava Yisrael Amcha Tasihim Leolam. V'tov b'necha levarech et amcha Yisrael b'chol עת ובכל שעה Bishlomecha. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam.
There was a little kid sitting in the back of the sanctuary, and though he didn't know any of the prayers, he just kept reciting the Aleph Bet from memory. Aleph Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey. He would just keep doing so over and over to the frustration of the people around him. They would try to shush him. They would try to quiet him. They would try to teach him the prayers. And eventually the kid grew frustrated by everyone attempting to tell him what to do and said, I'm back here doing the best that I can. I don't know all of the prayers. I simply know all of the letters that you are forming into prayers. It's my hope that God will know what to do with each of my letters. So too, perhaps it is for us when we sit in a prayer service. Sometimes the prayers come from the words on the page. Sometimes we wish to add that which can only come from our own hearts. Sometimes we don't know what to say. Simply being present in this place in a moment of silence can sometimes be enough. And so at the conclusion of this section of our service, I invite you to take this opportunity for silence or for silent prayer, for the words on the page or the words of your heart. May all of the letters, may all of the words, may all of our silence be acceptable to you, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Page 253 in our prayer books, we find our Mishaberach Lecholim, our prayer for those who are ill and in need of help, in need of healing, in need of peace. If there are those you are thinking of in need of healing of mind, of body, of spirit, I invite you to share their name aloud. Baruch atah Adonai rofeh hacholim. Blessed are you, God, who brings a measure of comfort to all who are ill. And together we say, Amen. Page 253.
Mi sheberach avotenu mikor habracha li'imotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mi sheberach imahotenu mikor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
I'm sure there are some of you who are just relaxing in your seats, glad after a long week, and you may not forgive me for the participatory aspect of tonight's sermon. But between all of us, I think we can probably come up with it. Can we come up with the list of the 10 plagues that were said to have been wrought on the Egyptians when the Israelites were making it out of Egypt? We can do this together, right? Throw one out there. Let's knock them off as we go. Frogs, locusts, boils, darkness. We jumped to the big one. Slaying of the firstborn, excellent. Blood. Right? Some type of cattle disease or, right? Boils. It's hard to hold up your last two fingers. I think we already had darkness, didn't we? Lice. It's not possible to hear that word and not start scratching. Did we get to that other one that comes down from the sky? Hail. I'm not sure if we got that one or not. I feel like we've got to 10 here. And it happens that the one we saved is exactly the one that I want to talk about. For it is the plague of hail that has been on my mind this week. You know, the verse of Torah we read, Exodus chapter 9, verse 24, talks about hail, but perhaps we've never paid close enough attention as Rashi did. Vayehi barad, there was hail. Ve'esh mitlachat betoch habarad, with fire flashing in the middle of the hail. Perhaps you have noticed this verse before and did what I did. Okay, it's hailing, it's thundering and lightning, there's a whole lot going on. The Egyptians had reason to be scared. But that wasn't quite good enough for Rashi. He says, hail with fire in the middle gives new meaning to the expression a snowball's chance in, well, the Christian imagination of the afterlife for people who have transgressed, doesn't it? Fire right inside of each ball of hail. Rashi says a miracle within a miracle has occurred here. Fire and hail mingled, although hail is water. But in order to perform the will of their creator, Rashi says, they made peace, one with the other. Neither fire nor water changed their essential nature, but for the greater good, in this case, doing what God wanted of them, they found a way to make it work. The same phenomenon, it turns out, exists in this week's Torah portion. Now, I'll be the first to admit that I often read over the first few verses of Parashat Balak as if they were some type of preamble to the story of the talking donkey that comes later in the Torah portion. And yes, in my mind, that is always Eddie Murphy's voice in the form of the talking donkey. Or perhaps it's a preamble to the blessing that we're offered. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, how great are your tents, O Israel. But in doing so, in skipping those first verses, I missed out on something amazing. It says, Moab was alarmed that the people, the Israelites, had become so numerous. Moab dreaded the Israelites, and Moab said to the elders of Midian, well, basically what they said is, help, they're too many, we don't know what to do. This verse doesn't seem like much. It feels like a preamble. Until again, we read Rashi's commentary. He says, don't Moab and Midian hate one another? Every other time they're mentioned together in the text, they're fighting. His answer is very similar to the combination of hail and fire. For the greater good, the enemy of my enemy may not exactly be my friend, but is at least someone I can work with against a common threat. The Moabites and the Midianites came together in the same way fire and hail did, willing to work despite their differences. This week, today, President Biden left Israel for Saudi Arabia. It's a remarkable about-face from then presidential candidate Biden when he promised to make Saudi Arabia a pariah nation for its human rights abuses. But just like the hail and the fire, neither country, America nor Saudi Arabia, has really changed its essential nature. And the issues that frustrated candidate Biden are the same issues that frustrate President Biden. But perhaps they seem to recognize that there is a greater good that can come from a temporary alliance. The enemy of my enemy may not exactly be my friend, but at least it's someone I can work with against a common threat. For the United States, that greater evil is currently Russia. For Israel, from the first half of President Biden's trip, the looming evil is Iran. And for Saudi Arabia, frustrating both Russia and Iran seems to be always in its strategic interests. Following on the Abraham Accords, the normalization agreements between Bahrain, Morocco, the UAE, and Israel, none of which could have likely happened without Saudi Arabia's at least implicit buy-in, it also appears that Saudi Arabia is making steps to normalize relations with the Jewish state. Israeli flights can now enter Saudi airspace, and Muslim pilgrims from Israel can now begin the Hajj directly on a flight from Israel to Mecca. Everyone's also hinting that there could even be more that follows. I'm under no misconception that Saudi Arabia has a newfound love for Israel. Don't misunderstand me. Nor do I think Israel and the United States should be happy about living in a world where they're cozying up to Saudi Arabia. I'm just grateful that they seem to be uniting against a greater and even more existential threat. In its own way, that makes today a historic day, perhaps with more to come. Not on ethical principles, that I don't like about what's taking place, but through the same realpolitik that united the Moabites and the Midianites in this week's Torah portion. The enemy of my enemy may not be my friend, but there are times when we can work together. Fire and hail, Midianites and Moabites, America and Israel and Saudi Arabia. In the interests of a greater peace in this world, I'll take even that strange alliance, which until now, well, I would have given a snowball's chance. It's going to be interesting to see what happens, won't it? I invite you to continue watching the news through the rest of President Biden's trip, as I will be. And according to Israeli media, in the weeks to come, they're hoping for even greater normalization. They have their fingers crossed that it will be similar to the Abraham Accords. We'll find out. You never know. You never know. I invite you to turn back in your Sidurim, back in your prayer books, to the bottom of page 282. On the bottom of page 282, we find words of Aleinu L'Shabach as we begin to conclude our service. And as you find your page, I would invite you to rise.
Aleinu L'Shabach L'Adon HaKol L'Ativ Gdula L'Tzeh Breshit Shelo Asanik Goyei Ha'aratzot V'lo Samanu K'mishpachot Ha'adama Shelo Sam Chalkenu Kahem V'gor Aleinu Kechol Hamonam V'anachnu Korim Umishtachavim Umodim Lifnei Melech Malchei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu V'ne'emar V'haya Adonai L'melech al kol ha'aretz Bayom ha'hu Yeh Adonai echad U'shemo echad.
I invite you to be seated. Words of Kaddish Yatom, our mourner's Kaddish, can be found on page 294. And with these words on page 294, we remember those who have gone before us. We observe the period of Shloshim for Mary K. Gollum and mark the yahrzeit, the commemoration of the passing of Erwin Blyman, Emanuel Bukareski, Isidore Fellner, Edith Schaffel Field, Pamela Friedman Vasquez, Pearl Frumkin, Margaret Goldberg, Francie Hausman, Ruth Kaplan, Faye Levin, Ida Levy, Marvin Lichtenstein, Rosalind Markovsky, Elizabeth Marcus, Ruth Marks, Sadie Mates, Beatrice Boonen Pollen, Harry Rosenberg, Jeffrey Rosenberg, Abe Ross, Sheila Rubin, Ruth Sajewitz, Mark B. Schulman, Joseph Singer, Miriam Solid, Harry Stern, Isidore Tabak, Sidney Tyroler, and Sarah Zoffer. If there are others you are remembering on this Shabbat, or if I have inadvertently mispronounced the name of a loved one, I would invite you to share their name at this time. Yehei zichronam livracha, may their memories be for us an everlasting blessing. I would invite you to rise as together we remember and affirm words of Kaddish Yatom, our mourner's Kaddish, page 294. Yit gadal vit kadash shemei rabbah, belma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uvyomechon, uvchaye dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'gala v'zman kariv v'imru, amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mevarach le'alam u'lamei amaya. Yitvarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yitalev v'yithalal. Shemei d'kudsha barich hu. Le'ela min kol verchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechamata. Dami ma'avimru. Amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya. v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Oseh shalom mimramav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. You may be seated. As a rabbi, we have to take some things on faith, and never is it more true than dealing with technology. You may have noticed at the midpoint in our service, when Emily and I lost the camera feed that we're used to seeing, I was a little bit worried that it translated for those at home. I should have known that Leslie had everything under control, and it was only from my angle that there was a challenge. But thank you, as always, for making that possible. Thank you, Rabbi Emily, for joining us in the musical leadership of services. And thank you to everyone who has participated in our service, who has joined us on this beautiful summer Shabbat evening. We conclude our service on page 353.
You had that. You knew that.
Page 353 with a prayer for peace, praying that it comes quickly and soon throughout the Middle East, throughout this world.
Odevo shalom aleinu, Odevo shalom aleinu, Odevo shalom aleinu ve'al kulam. Odevo shalom aleinu, Odevo shalom aleinu, Odevo shalom aleinu ve'al kulam. Salam aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam, salam, salam aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam, salam. Odevo shalom aleinu, Odevo shalom aleinu, Odevo shalom aleinu ve'al kulam. Odevo shalom aleinu, Odevo shalom aleinu, Odevo shalom aleinu ve'al kulam.
Shabbat shalom.